Great. So first of all, hi. And I want to say thank you to Sherry, my new friend. Sometimes you meet people and you feel like you met them before, and I think Sherry and I had that mutual kind of feeling when we met recently. And I have to tell you, I speak at a lot of universities. A lot. And I've been involved in different career development offices and their offering. And I just need to say to you, I have never seen a team like this put together in such an organized fashion to help the students move forward. I mean, I'm not going to name any brand names, but I've spoken to a lot of people. And I actually have goosebumps, literally, you can see them. It's so exciting. So I can't encourage you more to take advantage of this great office, and here's why. This is kind of a great place for you to learn how to do this career management over time. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, and then we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. And I want you guys to be interactive. One of the things you need to learn about your career life is that you own it. And you own it in so many different ways, one of which is by being an active participant in everything that you get involved with. And so let me just tell you about my career path a little bit. And as Sherry mentioned, it's kind of zigzaggy. And so let me just tell you where it started. I have 2 undergraduate degrees, one in mechanical engineering and one in theater and film. And I got out of school and I went to work at the National Theatre of Great Britain in London. And I will tell you, I'm not going to share this story today, but the way I got that job was by sitting in the lobby of the National Theatre for 8 straight days until someone would talk to me. I did go home to sleep at night. But that was how I got that job. I befriended the people who actually worked in the reception area at the theater, and finally they got someone to talk to me. It's a fun story. But I'm not going to share that one today. I went from there to working in the professional film industry, where I was a Hollywood movie producer and a screenwriter. And I got asked this really interesting question at the beginning of the sort of CD-ROM software era to write an interactive movie that you actually participate in while you're riding cardiovascular gym equipment. So you're on your treadmill. And I was writing movies at the time, and now I'm running through a movie. And depending on how well you're doing in your training, you had this little biometric thing on your thumb. It would measure your pulse, and depending on how well you're doing, it would change the story path. And I realized at this moment in time that this mechanical engineering design world stuff that I had come up through, and this experience design, theater, film stuff I had come up with, were starting to merge into this new world. And as I'm in the middle of traveling into this new place, the web came out. And I happened to be up in the Bay Area in California, in San Francisco, at this time. And so I became what's now known as a user experience designer. At the time we called it an information architect, a user interface designer, an interaction designer. We didn't know what to call it back then because this was a completely new medium. So I started working in the beginning of the .com era, and I built a lot of websites for a lot of interesting people. And it was at the time where people throwing money at a person who had a business plan that was 3 sentences and an idea. And Kleiner Perkins would then give you $5 million to go try to do this in your garage. And that was happening all the time. And so I had all of these young companies calling me and saying, we just got funded, and we hear you're a user interface designer. Can you come help us build our company? And I would say to them, great, who do you want to be when you grow up? And I don't know. So I ended up developing some product development and product marketing methodologies that really came out of film producing, that allowed me to help these companies figure out who they are and what they want to be, and then define, design, and develop a plan for taking that company or that product to market. Now, interestingly, I was on this journey, and in the middle of which some things happened in my family life, and I ended up taking a detour, which was such a cool detour, and it's similar to what you guys are doing now, because I went and did a one-year mid-career program at Harvard at the Kennedy School of Government. And I came out with a 1-year MPA. I know how intense it is. I encourage you to make the best of it. You're around really cool people, and you will miss this environment when you leave. I still do. And it actually brought me from California back to Boston, where I ended up restarting my business and working with a lot of social entrepreneurs to do things around how to use technology to make the world a better place. And in the midst of doing all of this, I actually had a client this past fall that was not the nicest person to work with. And I have a philosophy that I really don't want to work with people who are mean to me. And as a consultant, luckily you get to make that choice sometimes. So I actually, on the day after Thanksgiving this past fall, fired my client. And the next day I started writing a book. And it was, how do you apply all I know about product marketing and product development to the most important product of all, which is the product that is you. And this is something that I had been doing over the years with so many people who had watched me zigzag through my career and say, how can I make those changes? How are you willing to do that? And over the years, I've been helping people do that. And I noticed that there were actually specific things and tactics and stories, and it all started coming together. And that's how actually I ended up meeting Sherry, is because the book came out on April 6th. And so what I want to share with you is that you too can actually be the artistic director of your own career. It's a question of how you do that. And so I want to say that the first and most important thing is to actually own your own career. I know it's something these guys said earlier. I call it claiming your career as your own. And what I encourage people to do is actually at some point in time, go sit by yourself for a little while, write out some kind of statement what it means for you to own your own career. And raise your hand, shout to the sky, do whatever ridiculous thing you need to do to actually make this stick with you. Because if you don't claim your career as your own, let me just tell you, careers don't happen. They are built, they are made. All of these crazy stories I tell you took so much work. None of this happens easily. And so the first thing I always tell people when I'm working with them around career development is claim your career. And so once you've done that process, okay, fine, Suzanne, I raised my hand, I claim my career, now what? Now what do I do? Well, I think that there are some very concrete things that you can do to figure out how to have the career you want. But the most important part, just like product development, is you need to know who you are and what you want to be. And I actually have a framework for this. And in fact, can I draw on the board? Can you guys see if I draw over here? Is that going to be bad for these people? It's okay? Great. I'm going to draw. It's really hard to draw with 70 people watching you, but I'm going to do my best. So I have 3 circles here. And for those of you who can hopefully read my bad handwriting, I like to think about the development of what I call your personal career brand. And what a personal career brand is that brand that you bring to market that allows you to present and sell yourself to an organization that might be interested in buying you. Because that's essentially what's happening when you're going and getting a job. You're convincing someone of your brand. So here's a good example. How many of you own a car? Okay. So the car companies spend an awful lot of money trying to figure out what brand they are. In fact, they spend gazillions of dollars doing brand development, focus group testing, and then they actually spend a ton of money advertising to you. So if I said to you, I want to drive the safest car out there, you would all yell, thank you. And if I said to you, I want to drive a really eco-friendly car and be good to the planet, you would say? And if I said to you, I want to have the ultimate driving experience because I'm really into driving, you would say? I heard something different, but it is BMW because they are the ultimate driving machine. Despite what you might think personally, their brand is the ultimate driving machine. And so the fact is that you are not a car, but you need to figure out what it is that you're selling. You have to figure out how you're going to get people to buy you. And I'm going to tell you a secret that maybe your good folks at career development here won't tell you, but I'm going to tell you a secret, so let's pretend they're not listening. People don't buy skills. They don't, honestly. they buy a person that they think is going to be an amazing contributor to their team. And although I want to promote my own book and recommend my book, I'm actually going to recommend a different book, which kind of sounds funny. But Jim Collins wrote an amazing book called Good to Great. And there's only one chapter I really want you to think about. And it's called First Who, Then What. And in this amazing book about business, Jim Collins says, get the right people on the bus, then figure out what seat to put them in on the bus, and then figure out where to take the bus. And the interesting thing about how people get hired these days is, yes, you're all coming out with an MBA, and you're all going to have a certain amount of skills with some particular verticals. But when you are competing against someone else who has a similar background to you coming in to interview for a job, at the end of the day, they're going to buy you. People buy people. Think of it differently. People invest in people. And so the question is, how do you get them to invest in you? And so part of it is by developing your personal career brand. I actually think of it as a 7-step process. I'm going to show you 3 of them right here. And this is about understanding this Venn diagram that is the intersection of your passions, your interests, and your skills. And I call this spot right here, I call it the sweet spot. And this is the spot where you are actually operating at your best. It's where you are taking something you're passionate about. And when I say passion, I mean something that gets you out of bed in the morning. I'm not talking about something you're interested in, and I'll explain the difference in a second, but something that actually gets you out of bed in the morning. So someone tell me a passion. Something you're passionate about. Yell out, please. Food? Zumba. Okay, I'm going to tell you those are interests. And I'm going to explain why in a second. What's someone passionate about? I'm going to throw one out there. Changing the world. Helping people. Someone else.
Red Sox.
Yeah, that's such an interest. But I understand why you want it to be a passion. I get it, I do. Something else that is a passion, something that motivates you. It gets you out of bed in the morning. What are you guys passionate about? Tell me.
Creating wealth.
Creating wealth, that could be a passion, absolutely.
Challenging people to be better.
Challenging people to be better. One more, and then we're going to move on. Yes? Making new friends. Oh my God, I love that one. That's a good one. I have not heard that one in all the times I've spoken. I think that's great. Okay, so these are passions. These are things that actually drive us. Now, what are some interests? Interests are the things that captivate your thoughts. They captivate the thing that you want to focus on for right now. So if actually a passion, over here I heard Zumba, was to be healthy or to have fun, I don't know how you relate to Zumba, I would say the passion is for those experiences. And the interest is Zumba, because it might change someday to Kung Fu. I practice Kung Fu. I love it, probably for a similar reason. And so we have to figure out where your passions lie. What is that thing that at the bottom of your gut is driving you to actually do what it is you want to do? And my philosophy around this is that over time, your passions really focus. And you get more and more passionate about the thing in your gut. But your interest expands. So if you're really passionate about helping people have clean water to drink, if you're interested in helping people get healthy around the world, your interest might be clean water for a time. But for another time, it might be about sustainable food development. Right? Those are different interests that allow you to practice within the same place of passion. And so skills are great. They're important, and you need to grow them, and you need to do some care and feeding so that they get developed. And the good news about skills, while your passions are focusing and your interests are expanding, your skills are actually growing. Because every time you have an experience, whether it's at a company or in school or any kind of volunteer work you do, you are gaining more and more skill with the things you do. And so I encourage people to actually work at this sweet spot of where your passions, your interests, and your skills align. So when we talk about, okay, Susanne, I claimed my career. Now what am I supposed to do with my life? I think the first step is to know who you are. And to know who you are, you need to assess what your own personal passions, interests, and skills are. That's your set of criteria that you're bringing to the who you are. And from there, it's the what you want to be. And so I just want to play a tiny exercise. No, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to take a tiny exercise. Someone said they had a passion for making friends. I love that. I'm going to put it over here. And someone tell me something that you're interested in, now that you understand what an interest is. It could be travel. It could be food. It could be, tell me. Help me out. Interactive session. What?
Food photography.
Food photography. Wow, that's really specific. I like that. Can we separate it just for now, for food? Just for the sake of making this example a little bit simpler for everybody? And let's say a person let's name a skill. What's some skills you guys have? I'll tell you one, public speaking. You can decide whether I'm good at it or not, but I think it's a skill. Tell me one that you guys have. What's a skill? Driving? Okay. Interpersonal skills? Help me out. Communication. Creativity. Writing. Computer skills. Management. Leadership. All right, I'm going to pick writing, just because I feel like it. And since I'm up here, I can, right? All right, so we're going to take 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes. And we're going to say that we have a person in this classroom. I'm going to use, what's your name? Jessica, as an example, since she gave us food. And this is also pertains to whoever said back there, making friends. What's your name? Rohin. And we're going to say, okay, we have this imaginary person, and their passion is about making friends, connecting with people and making friends. And they have this deep interest in food. And they're really good at writing. I want you, without naming a company or naming a specific job description, to tell me what this imaginary person could do to find a career at the sweet spot where their passion for making friends, their interest in food, and their skill of writing comes about. What is that? Tell me, everybody. Louder, please. Writer for a newspaper. How does that involve making friends or food? Okay, so in some way you're talking about someone who's building a following by writing for a magazine. Okay, over here.
Maybe start like a specialty food blog.
And tell me how that's great for food and writing. Tell me how that's about making friends.
Well, they could kind of take the social aspect into it with their followers and maybe organize events.
Okay. So if we talk about brainstorm idea number 1, and it's kind of combining what we said about newspaper up here with this. So this is a specialty food blog with some social networking. I'm just going to say SN, social networking components that allow people to connect around food. And, okay, one more. Yeah?
Okay. He could have a restaurant, and so many people are going to come, and he could write recipes and sell them.
Okay, so we've got a cookbook writing restaurant entrepreneur. All right, one more. Let me get this written. Cookbook writing, restaurant entrepreneur. One more. Someone, how about way in the back?
Well, I think his point of working for a newspaper is a great one because it's obviously a big company where there's a lot of people to make friends with.
Oh, okay, so that's actually...
Is that where you were going? You work for a big newspaper, there's thousands of people that work there, and there's instant network of people to make friends with.
Okay, so I think these are great, and I think what you're saying is that you're taking the passion for making friends outside of the job environment. And you're saying, it's at my work, I happen to meet lots of people. What I'm suggesting is you take your passion for making friends, because that's what gets you up in the morning, and you find a thing that you could do for work that's going to allow you to connect with people and make friends. So hopefully that clarifies that a little bit.
A restaurant maitre d',
Uh-huh.
the face of the restaurant, bring in people, establish connections.
Yeah, I like that. It's a little bit of a job description. So I'm actually looking more. I'm going to take one more. How about over here?
Well, Eat, Pray, Love is exactly what I thought of at first. So
Uh-huh.
I'd take the writing aspect and make it on the road. So I'd say travel, you can go to Italy, India, you'd be meeting new people the whole time. You're writing about food, and you're making friends.
Okay, so brainstorm idea number 3 is a writing travel log about food. Okay, I think you guys get the idea. Yes? Okay. So here's the thing about figuring out who you are and what you want to be, is that once you do, and your passion circle is filled with 10 things, and your interest circle is filled with 12 things, and your skills circle is filled with 10 or 15 things, you're going to look at this thing and you're going to go, ah! How am I supposed to decide what I want to do? I'm passionate about so many things, and I'm interested in so many things, and I've got all these skills. How am I supposed to figure that out? Well, what thinking about the sweet spot does is it allows you to play this game. And it's a game I recommend that you guys play throughout this year. In fact, I would think, now that I hear that you're doing study groups, that this might be a great exercise for you guys to do on a regular basis, because as you're here, as you take different classes, you're going to realize, oh, that made me passionate. That class, that topic, that thing excited something inside of me that I want to do more about that. Right? So this kind of thing evolves over time, and where my career zigged and zagged and zigged and zagged happened for 2 reasons. One, I like to remain open to everything. I don't have specific goals, because if you had asked me when I was producing movies in Hollywood what my 5-year plan was going to be, and if I had said, I'm already a movie producer, but I want to be a bigger movie producer, if I had made that my goal, when this weird opportunity came along to write this interactive software thing, I never would have known to pay attention to that, because it wasn't part of my focused goal. And so I like to say, remain open. You never know where the path is going to lead. I never thought I'd end up writing a book and speaking in front of colleges. It just happens when you are open. The second thing is that depending on where you are in life and you're reevaluating that sweet spot, sometimes it changes. Life circumstances change. Your family situation might change. The place you live might change. You might change inside. And so if you are always paying attention to who you are throughout this journey of this year, you have a great opportunity for this 9-month, 12-month playground for you to learn, add new skills, figure out what your passions are, and then create an opportunity. And the next step that I say out of this is that once you know that, and there are a few other steps to understanding really your personal career brand. One is, what kind of contributor do you want to be in the world? Do you want to be a team member? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be an individual contributor? There's a lot of different ways people can exist in the world. And if you work at a job that isn't fit your contribution style, as I like to call it, sometimes there's a disconnect, and you're not quite happy. And the other thing to think about in terms of your whole brand is, what size of stage do you want to work on? Are you interested in working at your local community level? Or is the impact that you want to be more massive and global? So these are things that you can start to think about as you evaluate who you are and what you want to be. And then once you know that, here's where I'm going to differ from a lot of people who talk about career development. I actually think you shouldn't look at job postings. And these people over here are going to kill me. Oh, all right, they're clapping. This is good. I'm not going to end up killed. That's good.
Only one of them clapped. I'm sorry. We'll talk to her later.
All right. here's the thing. Job listings are great to give you an idea. But here's what happens. If you are this really cool, interesting person that you've discovered through a process, whatever process, of figuring out who you are and what you want to be, and you know that, and you're burning to do this thing where you're doing a specialty food blog with social networking as part of it, then if you go read a job posting, and it's, doing a blog, but it's for, some technology gadget stuff, it doesn't quite fit, but you really want a job, so you're going to apply anyway. Right? What happens when you read job postings is you are trying to fit yourself in to a mold that someone wrote for a particular job. So what if you turn the model on its head a little bit? And what if you guys were able to go to CCD and say, you know what? I want to work at Toys R Us because you have investigated a variety of companies. Instead of looking at job postings, you're looking at company profiles. You're finding out the kinds of people and companies who are doing work that aligns with your passions, your interests, and your skills. So what if you went to Monster.com or CareerBuilder or whatever website you use to look up postings, and what if instead of reading the job postings and trying to say how you can funnel yourself in so you get a reasonable amount of search results, what if instead you looked at the section that they have on company profiles? Say you were one of these people who had a passion for changing the world, and you went to idealist.org or Volunteer Match. And on Volunteer Match, they have a great set of organizational profiles of how people are making change in the world. And my philosophy, and I hope it's a philosophy you consider embracing, is what if you then found in people within the organizations that you're interested in working in, and you got those people to buy into you. I'm not saying for a particular job, but they invest in you, and they're invested in your future. And once you start to meet, befriend, associate with the kinds of people who are doing the kinds of work you want to be doing, when an opportunity arises to do that kind of work, they're like, hey, I know that person. I know someone who's great for that, right? So what I'm trying to say is there's going to be some great work that's provided from CCD. They're going to help match you. They're going to help you figure out some of this stuff. They're going to help you get directed towards the right kind of job listings and the companies. But there's so much of the work that you need to do. They're not going to hand you a job. No one will. They're not going to hand you a career. No one will. That's why at the beginning I said, raise your hand and claim your career. Because if you don't, you're not going to have the career you wanted. So I'm going to pause there for just a minute and take some questions. Then I'm going to, if anybody has any, and then I'm going to finish off with a story. Oh, okay. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, ideas? I can't believe I was so brilliant that you have nothing to say. Yeah. Just do you want to, over here? Do we need the mic?
What would you say would be the number one thing you've learned? Any mistake you've made that you said, oh, I really went down the wrong path on that one, or shoot, I would have not done that, now that you've kind of gone through all these different things?
Wow.
Sorry.
No, I'm going to be honest, I don't know the answer, and here's why. That's a really good question. I have to think about that one. I don't think of it as mistakes.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe I'm Pollyanna, and maybe I have way too much of a positive attitude. But the fact is, I don't think of any of these opportunities as a mistake. It was a thing that actually taught me something else about myself. It taught me I'm not passionate about that thing, or it taught me I'm not interested in that thing, or I don't like doing X. So I'll tell you an example. I consult to a lot of big technology companies architecting software. That's what I do as my other career, besides speaking about careers. And I was working for an organization, and I was deep in the front-end architecture of this project. And it became very clear to me that the company needed a project manager. And I kept talking to the CEO and saying, I'm your consultant, you hired me, you need a project manager to make this project successful, come in on time, on budget. And I like this CEO a lot, but he wasn't getting it. And it wasn't until 2 months before the product was supposed to go live, and we were so far behind, and I did not have the authority to actually manage the project, though I was capable of it. So finally he says to me 2 months before the project is due, Susanne, will you take over responsibility for managing this project? Now, I agreed to. I also negotiated an additional 6 weeks because I proved to him that it was impossible, being as far behind as we were, to get this done. Here's my mistake. I loathe project management. But I was so committed to getting the product done. And having produced movies, I feel like I can kind of project my way out of anything. But I hate it. And here's my learning. I have a new client that I just took on, big online brokerage firm, and I'm redesigning how they think about online investing. And we were talking about resourcing the redesign. And my first thing out of my mouth was, you guys need to hire a project manager. And they're like, really? And I said, yeah. And I finally said out loud, because I won't do it for you. Because I hate it so much. Now, just because you have a skill at something doesn't mean you have to do it as part of your work. I hope that answered your question. Hold on to the mic.
What advice would you give to those who have a dream job, but based on like recession or there's no jobs available for that type of roles? You know, would you be settling for the next thing? Then like just say, I want to go into fashion marketing. What if there are no, it's like that's a recession and it's really hard to get into the job? Will I be settling if I just take a job in finance, in banking, because it's just easier? How would you go down that path then?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I can't tell you if you'd be settling or not. That's something you would have to decide for yourself. Here's what I would say, though. I don't believe there are no jobs in fashion marketing. I don't believe that for an instant. And here's why. If we talk about what I was saying earlier, what I call reverse engineering the job market, this idea that you use Monster, Volunteer Match, whatever job postings you're seeing, and instead of looking at the listings, you're looking at the companies, I would actually go and I would befriend someone at every single one of these companies you're interested in. And I would figure out a way to woo them. And I would figure out a way to get them to invest in you. And I'm going to wrap up in a bit with a story about exactly how I did that, and I broke into Hollywood in 6 weeks. And so breaking into Hollywood is hard, and it takes longer than 6 weeks. Breaking into fashion marketing is probably hard, but it doesn't mean there isn't anything available. So I'm going to ask you to rethink how you think about these things.
So like come May, and I don't have a job yet, so would I keep pushing for that job, or like just, you know, I have bills to pay, would I like take another job in banking?
So you've already decided?
That's not my dream job. Sorry.
So you've already decided in May you're not going to have a job?
No, I'm just...
No, seriously.
Because it's competitive and the economy is not doing great, and I know a lot of people who are jobless, you know, because it's not easy to get a job, a career like yours.
Okay, so I spent 20 years in California, and I'm going to sound really woo-woo for a second, so bear with me. If you tell yourself right now that you're not going to have a job in May, you will not have a job in May. Do I need to be clearer? Okay, so that being said, starting today, I would suggest you change your attitude. And whether it is that you're going to claim your career, do everything you can to make this happen, follow the steps that I've given you, I outlined in the book, that your great career advisors are going to work with you on, and create that opportunity. I call it creating an opportunity for luck to happen. My book is called Carry a Paintbrush, How to Be the Artistic Director of Your Own Career. And the reason it's called Carry a Paintbrush is because I like to think that, metaphorically speaking, I walk around with a bucket of paint and a paintbrush. And every time I see something that's interesting or something I want to do, I take out my bucket of paint and I take out my paintbrush and I paint a doorway. And after I paint that doorway, I open that doorway and I walk through. And what that means is that you can create, define, and do whatever you want to make your career happen. But you have to decide to do it. And so what I call that process of opening a door and walking through it, I call that creating an opportunity for luck to happen. What does luck mean? Luck means that you've worked really hard to actually get some kind of opportunity outcome out of the work that you're doing. Luck, except for if you're playing the lottery, does not happen. If you ask any successful person in the world why they're successful, they were saying, you know what, I was just lucky. It's not true. Luck is made. It is not just happen. So I like to encourage people to think of this as your mind is open, your opportunities are endless, and it's up to you to actually create that opportunity. I'm going to take one more question, I'm going to tell a story.
One question regarding career change.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, I understand that you have to do what you want and know yourself and go for it. But if you are in a move of a career change, sometimes the recruiters, they are looking and they rather take a safe step when they are looking at you. Okay, this guy has no background in marketing, for example, and he's applying for a marketing job because that's what he loves, what he's going to do. But I have other candidates that already have experience in marketing, and they already worked and they also like marketing. Mm-hmm. So you are competing with people that also has experience and have the passion.
Yeah.
How can you manage that? I know that's showing that you really want it and staying 2 months at the door or 8 days or might be a good way to show it. But
that was pre-9/11, by the way. So I don't think you should hang around 8 days in any lobby these days. They're going to take you to jail. I have a really easy answer, and you're not going to want to hear it.
No, I want to hear it because...
I don't know why you're meeting the recruiter. Why are you meeting the recruiter? They're the ones who are actually siphoning people out. You want the person who's pulling people in. So if, again, you take what I've been telling you, which is about reverse engineering the job market. You're not looking for job listings, you're looking for places that you want to work. You find an in-person, and you have that in-person invest in you so that you can meet the people who are doing the kind of work that you want to be doing when a job opportunity arises. And sometimes opportunities are made just for you because they dig you so much. You never had to meet that recruiter. So I know I'm being a little wise. I do. But I think when you are out there in this crazy competitive market, that is crazy and competitive, you have to do something different that is going to set you apart, that is going to get you in the door a different way, and that is going to allow people to value you differently. I saw one hand up in the back, wherever. I don't know if we want to take one more. I think we can handle one more. And I'll tell a question quickly. I mean, a story quickly. Yeah?
I was just wondering if you could give us an example.
Please, to be holding while we have the microphone come to the right location.
I was wondering if you could give us a quick example or some advice on zigzagging. So, if our dream job is to work in Hollywood, what we might do, if it's going to take a little bit longer than 6 weeks, but still feel good about our process and not necessarily meeting with recruiters, but
sure.
Can you give an example?
The story I'm actually going to tell about how I broke into Hollywood is actually going to answer that question a lot. I have a friend who wrote a book, and he said something really important in this book that I really try to live by on a regular basis. He said, set a direction in your life and then wander with purpose. So I'm always heading that way, but I'm wandering along the way. And that means that you see opportunities, you create opportunities, you make things happen. Even if you're in a current job that you see the end of the line where you want to be, you can actually work within your own job to take on more responsibilities, to build more rapport, to actually try to show your skills so that you can then maybe zag, Someone over here said something about lateral moves when asked the question earlier. You know, sometimes you can be going up this path, and you've been a financial services director at an analyst at a company, and you don't want to be in financial services anymore, but you really like doing financial analysis. So maybe you sidestep. And maybe you become a financial analyst at a fashion company. And then you go up that path for a while. And so there's always option. There's always option. I'm going to start my story, because we're going to follow up. I can hang around a little afterwards if people have more questions. But I do want to share with you the story about how I broke into Hollywood, because I think it might pull all of this together. And it's about a technique that I call networking by fives. And here's how it goes. I got to Hollywood in January, knowing no one who worked in the film business. And I stayed with my college roommate, who was a medical school student. So I was 24, and I arrived in town, and I was staying 45 minutes outside of Hollywood. And I'm like, I'm going to break into the film business. And, you know, like every idiot, whoever decided to go make it in Hollywood, I was that idiot. And so I knew one person who was in LA. She didn't work in the film business. She actually was a theater producer. And I knew her from my past life in theater. And so I called her and I said, Barbara, I'm in town and I don't know what to do. Can I just come talk to you? She's like, I don't know what to do. But yeah, come talk to me. So I went in on a Thursday evening to talk to Barbara. And she was busy. She was running late. So I sat in her lobby, and funny things happened to me in lobbies, as I told you about the National. And so I'm sitting in the lobby, and I'm waiting for her, and this gentleman comes in. And his name is Larry, and he says to me, hey, who are you? What are you doing here? I said, oh, I'm waiting for Barbara. Oh, I'm waiting for Barbara, too. So he's supposed to take her out for dinner that night. So turns out she's really delayed. So he and I get talking. And I listen to him, and I hear what he does, and I'm curious because I'm new in town, and I don't even know what people do in Hollywood. And so I was really interested in it. And here's the interesting thing about when you are interested in someone. If you let them talk about themselves, and you show genuine interest, they end up thinking you're wonderful. It's the truth. It's the truth. And so I start talking to this guy, and I'm listening to him, and after a little while of talking, he says, so tell me about you. Because when people think you're wonderful, they want to learn more about you. I mean, this is basic relationship management, right? So I start talking with Larry about, oh, I'm new in town, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, and he says to me, well, do you have a resume with you? And I said, yeah, I do, because you know what? You should always have a resume with you. Always. How many of you have a resume with you right now? Okay. Here's the thing. If you don't want to carry a big old 8.5 and 11 sheet of paper around with you everywhere you go without it getting wrinkled, get yourself a personal business card today. Go to Vistaprint. They do them free if you want black and white. And put on it your name, your contact information, your permanent email address, and a link to your LinkedIn profile. How many of you have a LinkedIn profile? Okay, if you don't have one, get one this afternoon, and then call Vistaprint and print your business cards. Because you always want to have your resume, because here's what happened when I did. I handed Larry my resume, and that was a Thursday night at about 5 o'clock. And I went home to my friend's house, and I promptly got a horrendous flu. And I was sick in bed all weekend. Monday morning, I'm feeling terrible. The phone rings. My friend says, it's for you. I pick it up, I'm like, oh. This woman says to me, my name is Bettina Viviano, and I work for Steven Spielberg's company, Amblin Entertainment. I hear you're new in town looking for a job. What? I'm like, oh, someone's playing a joke on me. Like trying to get the cobwebs out of my hair. I have this fever. I'm like, I'm hallucinating, right? Nope. In fact, this woman was the director of development for Steven Spielberg's company, Amblin Entertainment, and she was looking to hire an assistant of development. I didn't know what that meant. Oh well. She says, can you come in and meet with me to talk? I hear you're new in town. I said, oh yeah. I get myself out of bed, I get dressed, I drive up into Hollywood, I drive onto the Universal Studios lot. I still have my drive-on pass. It says Susanne Goldstein to see Steven Spielberg. I never met him, but I still have it. So I drive on, and I go in to meet Bettina Viviano, and she's just a little bit older than I am. And we start talking, and she says to me, okay, I'm a director of development, and I need someone to be my assistant, and you'll be doing X, Y, and Z around scripts. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what any of this means. And she said, the biggest thing you're going to be doing is coverage. Do you know how to do coverage? And I'm thinking, kind of sounds like, I don't know, a book report, coverage. So I'm like, yeah, I know how to do coverage. Now, granted, I'm not encouraging you to lie, sort of. But what I am trying to encourage you to do is be creative, be thoughtful, use your brains, you're smart, you're going to figure it out. And so I said to her, I'm happy to cover your scripts. I just moved here from London, that was true, and I don't know what format you deliver your coverage in. Would you mind giving me a sample of your coverage so I can match the format? And she's like, oh, great idea. So she hands me 3 scripts, and she hands me the coverage, and I go home that night, and I'm reading coverage, try to figure out what it is, and it turns out it's a book report. That does a little analysis at the end that says what this film, whether you should make it or not, whether it's worthy of the investment. So I stay up until 4 in the morning writing coverage for these 3 scripts, and I fax them back into her, and she calls me at 9 in the morning. She says, I read your coverage, I'd like you to come back in. So I drive to the Universal lot, and I go in and I meet with her, and all I know while I'm on the way to that interview is I never want to cover another script as long as I live. That's the only thing I knew. What am I going to do? I'm meeting this woman who works for Steven Spielberg, and I don't want the job that she might be offering me right now. I had to figure out what to do. So I go in and I meet with her. And we start talking. And we have a conversation. And through that conversation, we kind of go around a bunch of different things. And I never outright said I don't want to do coverage ever again in my life. But we were talking about my interests. And she and I came to the conclusion that we wanted to be friends. And at that moment, I realized having Bettina Viviano, who worked for Amblin Entertainment, as my friend, was so much more valuable than having her as my boss. I wasn't her peon, I was her peer. And at that moment, I had a moment of miracle happen, and I don't know how or why. And I said to her, you know, thank you. I'm new in town, and I don't know anybody, and in fact, I don't really know what people do. Do you have the name of 5 people that you think would be willing to talk to me for 5 minutes and tell me what they do for a living? She's like, oh, that's a great idea. So she writes down 5 names and numbers. This is before email, by the way. Writes down 5 names and numbers. I call all of them, and I say, Bettina Viviano from Amblin suggested I call you. Can I have 5 minutes of your time? Can I come into your office? And every single one of them said yes. And so I went into these information sessions. All I thought about was, I want to learn what they do. It wasn't about me getting a job. It was me learning about this person. And the funny thing about people is if you listen to them carefully and you're genuinely interested in what they do, they think you're wonderful. Exactly. And so every single one of these 5-minute meetings turned into a 25-minute discussion, at the end of which they turned their attention to me and said, so, tell me about you. What are you interested in doing? And I'd say, well, I really want to be on set, working in movies, and blah, blah, blah. And they'd say, cool, do you have a resume? And guess what? I did. And in fact, I would hand them 3. And I would say to them, feel free to share these with whomever you want. And so I would say to them as we're closing the meeting, I'm new in town. I'm trying to get to know this field. Do you think that you could introduce me to 5 of your friends who would be willing to talk to me for 5 minutes? I said, oh, that's a great idea. They write them down again, and I'd call those 5 people. Well, by the time I had been in Hollywood for 5 weeks, I had met 54 people. And on the 6th week, I was about to give up hope. Ridiculous, right? And I'm like, wow, I haven't broken into Hollywood, and I did something that women, maybe men, but mostly women do when they're in that state. I went shopping. Now, I didn't have any money. I couldn't afford anything, and I'm coveting this pair of boots that are so cool, and I'm in LA and everybody wears boots. And I couldn't afford it. There's no way I could afford it. I didn't have a job. And I'm looking at those boots and I said to myself, you know what? Before I allow myself to buy those boots, I'm actually going to go check my voicemail and see if anything came in. And I do, and there's a message from Disney Studios. And it says, we are staffing up a movie, and your resume appeared in the pile 11 times. We would like you to come in and talk to us about this. And I did, and that's actually how I got my first job in Hollywood. The point of my story is this: careers don't just happen. They are made, and it takes work, and it takes thought, and it takes getting to know people, and it gets people to buy into you. And so I encourage you during this year, this very cool and important year that you have, to think about the kinds of people you want to meet along the way. Meet them here at Babson. There's an enormous network here in Boston of every kind of business you can ever imagine. Get to know people. Yes, you're going to be busy with your work, and you're going to want to go to every party, and you're going to have all these things that career service offices wanted you to do, but get to know people. Take that time. So I'm sorry I ran a few minutes late, but thank you so much for listening, and I wish you the best. Grab your paintbrush and keep going. My pleasure.